Okay. So once again, this is okay. Here is the details of Mike's childhood, which is going to skip again. And these are his families, and his signs indicate those people who are actually dead by now. So it's a very personal matter to him, obviously. And this is another casualty which is occurred early in his life and had left a lasting impression and setting him on the course. And, okay, so this also describes his early childhood and science formation, him as a later scientist and cryonicist. So I think I can start in earnest now. This is slide 6. Mike promptly contacted the various cryonics organizations extant at the time and quickly joined the Cryonics Society of New York, CSNI, as a suspension member, taking jobs mowing lawns and doing the yard work to pay for his life insurance. In 1972, while visiting CSNI on his second school holiday, he was asked, along with young graduate students in pharmacology, cryobiology, Craig Fay, to perfuse and freeze a CSNI member. Clara Dostal has been pronounced legally dead a few hours earlier. He was 70 at the time and already amassed a considerable amount of hands-on experience in cryonics. This event, as you shall see a bit later, has a profound emotional and intellectual impact upon him. So, slide 7. The beginning of cryonics is probably best dated to the publication of Ettinger's The Prospect of Immortality in 1964. This date is important because it provides context for much that does to adversely affect cryonics, so should keep in mind as we proceed. So I'm going to skip this. This is actually... Oh, I think the other guys are dropping in. Yeah, I'll just continue. So by 1976, Mike Darwin has become uncomfortably aware that the future he expected was not materializing at a rate consistent with the worldview of 2001. Organ cryopreservation programs have been abandoned in all but one facility in the world. The US manned space program was doomed, and interest in serious interventive gerontology, let alone meaningful research, was nil. The money and intellectual resources required to achieve these goals have been redirected to an endless series of war, first in Vietnam and later in Middle East, as well as a succession of botched and unsuccessful programs to end poverty in the US, cure cancer, and deal with long-standing mishandling of the environment. The spending spree of the latter day of the Cold War bankrupted the Soviet Union and, in truth, bankrupted the West as well. The focus of the planet's population was on protecting themselves against bogeymen of their own making, and they spent maniacally to create weapon systems of vast lethality and complexity. So sometimes in 1976 he sat down and wrote out a timeline of milestones that he thought would be necessary if he was to survive. There was a simple list of critical achievements with the dates by which they must be accomplished alongside them. It took a conservative and probably all too unfortunately realistic prediction of the likely arc of his productive life. While it has proven a more accurate road map than his naive first imaginings of his future, it too has fallen short and has proven flawed, because fatally flawed. Since he was not then, not now, either poorly informed about cryonics nor lacking real-world experience in practice, suggest you might want to pay careful attention to what went wrong with this very conservative timeline, because it very likely has important implication for your future.
Hello,
as well.
Everyone. We are now making ready to start with the talks. Huh? He hasn't started already, has he?
Yeah, we have started already. Because I wasn't sure whether you were there or not. Shall I begin again, or?
saying it up because I told him we were making.
There's a hell of a lot of people here. Huh? There is a hell of a lot of people here. Can you get, please, my headphones from there?
Yes.
Excuse me, Eugen. I hope you have not started it already. We are not broadcasting it yet. We are going to begin now.
Okay, then I'll start again. Sorry about that. So please tell me where I can begin. Giulio?
I'm so stupid. Just put it back there. Here, this goes to the sound system.
Yeah.
Just put it back there.
So I'm waiting for instructions. Hello, can you hear me? Hi, Giulio. Can you hear me?
Okay, I'd like to ask everyone here if you can speak loud because we are doing some sound testing in the auditorium.
Hi, Giulio. Can you hear me?
I don't hear any.
Oh, because it's muted.
No, it's the...
Yeah.
So this is David Styles' audio.
Okay, good.
Okay, I'm very sorry. I didn't hear anything because I had my computer sound switched off. Now I am...
This is David Styles' audio.
Right.
Did you hear me okay, Julia?
Okay.
There's the feedback.
We've got serious feedback. Okay, I guess I can start then. Do I have 30 minutes or less? It's me, Eugen. Okay, I'm waiting. This talk normally takes 2.5 hours, so I had to butcher it badly in order to get it down to half an hour, and I guess I will have to truncate in it somewhere in between. Nope. Only have the text 1 hour before, and the slides about noon. So I wanted to have two days more, but unfortunately.
I'm going to say a couple of things. Can I ask Eugen to mute your own microphone as long as I speak, and then you put your microphone back?
Okay, I'm switching off now.
Okay, so welcome to the people in Teleplace, and I see that there are very many of you. Let me just count you. This must be about 10. We must have something like about 30 or more people in here. And thank you very much for coming. What we're going to do this afternoon, we're going to broadcast the talks from Teleplace to the physical audience in Milan. Here, many people, I think, have gone for an extended afternoon break. I count about 20 or 25 persons, but I do hope that those who are not here will come back. We are going to have one extra talk, not initially foreseen, and that will be the talk of David Stiles, who is going to give his talk from Teleplace. Then we have, I don't remember the order of the menu, if you can get me a version of the program, please. We're going to have Robert, who is here. Let me check if Lincoln is here, because Lincoln is going to come after him. Then we're going to have Suzanne Gildert. And in the program, I had scheduled a final talk that would be the video of the high-quality version of the video of Ben Goertzel's Cosmos Manifesto. I think if we run late, I'm going to skip that one. So I think we should have enough time. Does Eugen has 30 minutes? Make it a bit shorter than 30 minutes. Okay, now I'm going to switch my own microphone off, and because I'm not able to use headphones because the audio cable must go to the sound system of the hall. Yes, it is, if everyone make it faster. I'd now like to give the floor to Eugen. I'm going to stop my microphone. You have the floor, Eugen.
Okay, thanks. As I said before, this talk isn't mine, and normally it takes 2.5 hours. So the result is going to be not quite the same as expected. Only got the full slides by noon, and the text wasn't out of the printer before a couple of hours ago. So the result is definitely not going to be as expected, and apologize to Chamberlain in advance, because this shouldn't be that way. So anyways, I start again. So once again, this is original slides by McDarwin, and I'm not Margaret McDarwin, and so whenever I make a mistake, it's mine and mine alone. So next one. This is a short slide illustrating that Mike's happy childhood was not a good preparation for the harsh realities of life. All this extended family of Mike is here present here. Mike is actually a baby here in his mother's arms, and all of these red marked people are dead by now. So it's a very personal matter to him. So this was another close person who died and was only discovered after a week, badly decomposed, which made a lasting impression on the young Mike and sent him upon his course to become a scientist and chronicist. So this is his early science projects and his early attempts to free his life in order to be able to resume it, maybe. So, slide 6. So he promptly contacted the various Chronics organization extant at the time and quickly joined the Chronics Society of New York, CSNI, as a suspension member, taking jobs mowing lawns and doing yard work to pay for his life insurance. In 1972, while visiting CSNI on his secondary school holiday, he was asked, along with the young graduate students in pharmacology cryobiology, Greg Fay, to perfuse and freeze a CSNI member, Lara Dostal. He has been pronounced legally dead a few hours earlier. He was 70 at the time and already amassed a considerable amount of hands-on experience in cryonics. This event, as you shall see a bit later, also had a profound emotional and intellectual effect upon him. The beginning of cryonics is probably best dated to the publication of Ettinger's The Prospect of Immortality in 1964. This date is important because it provides context for much that was already adversely affect cryonics, which should keep in mind as we proceed. This was the world which has influenced people's expectations of the future at the time. This set the tone for the future. By 1976, Mike was becoming uncomfortably aware that the future he expected was not materializing at a rate consistent with the worldview in 2001. Organ cryopreservation programs has been abandoned in all but one facility in the world. The US Men's space program was doomed, and interest in serious interventive gerontology, let alone meaningful research, was nil. The money and intellectual resources required to achieve these goals have been redirected to an endless series of wars, first in Vietnam and later in the Middle East, as well as a succession of botched and unsuccessful programs to end poverty in the US, the Great Society, cure cancer, and deal with long-standing mishandling of the environment. The spending spree of the latter day of the Cold War bankrupted the United Nations, and in truth bankrupted the West as well. The focus of the planet's population was on protecting themselves against bogeymen of their own making. They spent manically to create weapon systems of vast lethality and complexity. So somewhere late in 1976, he sat down and wrote a timeline of milestones that he thought was necessary if he was to survive. It was a simple list of critical achievements with the dates by which they must be accomplished alongside them. It took a conservative and probably all too unfortunately realistic prediction of the likely arc of his productive life. But has proved a more accurate roadmap than his naive first imaginings of his future. It too has proven short and has proven flawed, perhaps fatally flawed. Since he was not then, nor he now, either poorly informed about cryonics nor lacking in real-world experience in his practice, I suggest you must want to pay careful attention to what went wrong with this very conservative timeline, because it very likely has important implication for your future as well. This quote, suggested by Robert Ettinger for the opening of Robert Nelson's book, We Froze the First Man, was meant to imply that the success of cryonics was inevitable. It was an idea whose time has come. Victor Hugo was an idealist and a man who had the good fortune to live in an age where the first time has indeed come for ideas he cared passionately about and championed. Overlooked by Ettinger, that powerful paradigm, disrupting and socially inflammable ideas require careful preparation of the culture before they can flourish. No thinking person would imagine it possible to arrive in a Stone Age culture, such as Piro tribe in the Amazon basin, and begin discoursing successfully on quantum electrodynamics or natural selection. Dismal experience of Western Christian missionaries and of their flocks with African and Polynesian cultures similarly point to the futility of attempting to convert unprepared culture to ethical or ideological standards that are alien to their environment and destructive to their culture and their entire way of life. Applied engineering and electronics were undergoing explosive advances in 1964. The biological sciences lagged far behind. In the medical, biomedical, and cultural context of 1964, the year Ettinger's The Perspective of Mortality was published, the discovery of the structure of DNA was only 11 years old, CPR was only 4 years old, the Uniform Determination and Death Act would not be passed until 1978, 14 years later. The first heart transplant was 3 years in the future, 1967, and most of the United States had no emergency medical system, EMS. Ambulances were hearses driven by funeral directors. So I'm going to skip this one because it is important, but I will not be able to get it all of it. This is the way how novel ideas get implemented in practice. These are conventional approach, incremental, or radical. Structure of scientific paradigm, Lakatos, Kuhn. So the success of novel ideas depends upon more than their being provable by observation or demonstration. They must also have compatibility with fundamental, philosophical, moral, ethical, social, and political paradigms of the culture, and of course be technologically and economically feasible. They must also be critically have credible, articulate, and aggressive advocates. As it turns out, there are very broadly two ways that paradigm-changing ideas can be introduced into cultures. The first and easiest is by seduction. incremental, limited, powerful desire for benefits absent an understanding or understanding of detriments, including destruction of the existing order. The second way is by insurgency, organized, forceful, and determined effort to establish a new paradigm by subversion of the existing order. The first, seduction agriculture. The results of this seduction, not entirely positive. Similar state of affairs was pertained in the late 18th and early 19th centuries when the Industrial Revolution began. The Industrial Revolution allowed for the prodigious production of high-quality goods on a scale previously unimaginable. It created a cornucopia of wealth, allowing the average man and even the poor man to enjoy goods and services that even royalty or the richest of the elite could not have purchased at any price. The human cost of this was again very high. Child labor, dangerous working conditions that crippled and maimed, and a reduction in air and water quality that killed thousands at a time, often in the space of a few days. So I see there is a lot of chat going on, but I'm not going to follow it at the moment. So telecommunications, seduction, and also impact not entirely positive as compared to the face-to-face exchanges, which were natural at the time. This slide lists but a few of the social and cultural sea changes caused by telecommunications with a high-profile casualty. A family meal together where people where comparatively uniform values and experiences communed with each other. So there are some other scientific revolutions. I'm also going to skip one because we do not have the time. So the real reason the Dora Ken drama played out was that the cryonics, practiced well optimally, caused extreme cognitive dissonance in the medical and legal authorities in the community in which they were operating. Over and over again, they kept badgering Mike with the statement, 2 minutes was not long enough to wait after cardiac arrest before starting cryonics procedures, to which he responded repeatedly, well then, how long is long enough? How dead does someone have to be before it's okay to start working on them? You find death is when cardiac respiratory arrest occurs. You say nothing about when can or should be done afterwards. They found it enormously disconcerting and it made them angry, really angry. So if you look at cryonics objectively, in this context of this culture and this civilization at this time, then cryonics is just about the most disruptive and threatening idea that has ever come along. Unlike natural selection or germ theory of an heliocentrism, cryonics will inevitably overturn the vitalistic view of life, challenge the conventional definition of death, erode the need for musical afterlife, invalidate the core tenets of contemporary medicine, and radically redistribute capital and disrupt inheritance, bequests, and mortuary customs. What's more, it mandates a complete change in reproduction, perturbs generational succession, requires space colonization, requires and supports profoundly disruptive technology such as cloning, regenerative medicine, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, and more frightening of all, it ends the species and enables transhumanism. Beyond this inevitable long-term effect, cryonics has a number of poorly appreciated by chronicists, severely psychologically damaging adverse effects. As Curtis Henderson observed, all biographies end in tragedy. Everybody dies. Always. A consequence of this is also no one needs to feel guilty about living. In the end, we all end up dead. There are no survivors. Cryonics changes that because people now living have an opportunity to possibly cheat death. That means that if they choose to do so and succeed, they will have to face the prospect that they did not act quickly enough or aggressively enough to save the lives of all their other loved ones who have died or will die and not be cryopreserved. This survivorship guilt can be crippling and in some cases all-consuming, but at the very least it is always painful. One of the few advantages of death is that it is final. It puts an end to suffering and anxiety of uncertainty that must inevitably accompany life-threatening illness. Anyone who has agonized over the fate of a loved one, the intensive treatment unit, can at least begin to understand the psychological impact of stretching out that period of uncertainty over a lifetime and beyond. The devastating effects of this kind of limbo are often seen in cases where children are abducted and not found or soldiers are lost in battle, but no remains are recovered. Cryopreservation prevents the psychological closure of true death with disposition of remains and creates indefinite anxiety about the well-being of cryopreserved loved ones. Cryopreserved people are not put away in a cemetery where no further harm can come to them. Rather, they require indefinite care, vigilance, and protection. This is often a source of extreme anxiety in survivors. These immediate detrimental effects of cryonics become intensified during the terminal phase of cryonics patient's life. The presence of the standby stabilization team and the equipment and supplies disrupts intimacy during the dying process, may bitterly divide family members, opposed versus in favor, and blocks deeply held conditioned childhood mechanisms for coping with death and bereavement, no vague funeral or oral comforting rituals. With understanding of these general and largely unavoidable obstacles, we are now prepared to examine in greater detail the specifics of why cryonics failed to launch in 1964. The core ideas of cryonics, that death is a function of remaining biological structure, information, technological sophistication, and that deep cooling can arrest decay and preserve structure indefinitely to await resurrection by a more sophisticated future, medical technology, were first promulgated by Robert Chest Wilson Ettinger in a science fiction story, The Penultimate Trump, in 1948. Ettinger did nothing beyond his laying the idea out in his story until 1962, at which time he began to be concerned that no one else had come to the same conclusions he did. It occurred to him that if he did not act, at least inject the idea into the culture, he might not benefit from it himself. Ettinger, in turn, has been inspired to create cryonics based on 1931 science fiction story by Neil R. Jones, in which one Professor Jameson has his body rocketed into orbit following his death when he remains frozen until many millennia later his brain is removed and repaired by aliens, the Zoromes, who place him in a robotic body and allow him to accompany them on his romps around galaxy. About the same time, an intellectual and remittance man named Eve Cooper had come to the same conclusions as had Ettinger, and he privately published a manuscript that proposed the freezer program. Cooper, unlike Ettinger, had no scientific training, and his proposal for using Arctic or Antarctic storage lacked scientific rigor. In 1964, Ettinger published The Prospect of Immortality after it passed scientific review by universally respected experts at the time, such as Isaac Asimov and maverick heart surgeon and cryobiologist Richard Lillihei. Aside from the idea of cryonics, Cooper and Ettinger had a number of other things in common. Both men were intellectuals, academic types, who possessed large personal libraries, read voraciously, and were described by their contemporaries as visionaries, preoccupied with ideas. Neither man sought leadership positions and both looked to others, governments, NGOs, corporations, entrepreneurs, to subsume and implement cryonics. Their personalities were those of the classic introvert. I want to be at pains to point out that this is no way a criticism of either man. In general, we do not get to pick our personalities or temperaments, and these men were what they were. There were no fault or blame involved in being either an extrovert or an introvert. Both men saw cryonics as integrating into augmenting the existing cultural paradigm, Cooper, from a left or center perspective, believed cryonics should be implemented by the United Nations and administered from a top-down, central planning perspective as a public welfare measure, while Ettinger, from a right-of-center perspective, envisioned cryonics being implemented by large corporations and entrepreneurs offering a wide range of services in a largely less fair manner. Precisely for the reasons outlined above, two highly influential men who understood cryonics and the age of the pussyfoot, believed in their technical feasibility, rejected it, one personally and privately, and other vocally and publicly. The science fiction writer, savant, and media darling Isaac Asimov understood immediately that cryonics would upend the existing order and ultimately lead to a fundamental transformation of mankind into something other than human. He found this extremely disturbing and unnatural, and wrote and spoke extensively against cryonics on social, environmental, and moral grounds. The widely respected science fiction author Fred Pohl also understood the likely workability of cryonics and in fact wrote a very positive cryonics-termed novel, Pussyfoot, first published in 1966. Pohl rejected cryonics exclusively on the basis of survivorship guilt and concern about his ability to adapt in a world transformed by technologies even he might not be able to imagine. Pohl actually turned down an offer from the no-cost cross-observation from Darwin and several others active in cryonics in the 1970s, and he expressed his reasons for doing so pleasantly, articulately, and in person. Despite his shortcomings and setbacks, cryonics was initially received fairly well in the US. There was enormous publicity, and most of initial newspaper, radio, magazine, and TV coverage was open-minded and not infrequently positive. There was a great deal of public interest, and media appearances by Ettinger and others typically resulted in hundreds of requests for information. But the culture, both scientific and popular, were woefully unprepared for the idea. It's difficult today to communicate what the world was like in 1964. The discovery of the structure of DNA was only 11 years old. CPR was only 4 years old. Leonard Cobb would not hold his first citizen CPR training session in Seattle, Washington until 1972, 8 years later. The Uniform Determination of Death Act was not passed until 1978, 14 years later, and his first heart transplant was 3 years in the future, 1967. People uniformly saw life and death as binary states, and the idea that the soul, or some of the other mystical force, left the body at or shortly after the moment of death was nearly universal in the general population. Recovery from apparent clinical death, which is now widely understood and taken for granted, was a new phenomenon in 1964, and the emergency medical system, as we understood it today, did not exist. In most communities, the mortician hearse doubled as the ambulance, and the person most likely to transport you to hospital if you were gravely ill or injured was your local funeral director, one of his Balmer employees. It is debatable whether these formidable cultural obstacles could have been overcome. But what is not in dispute, that overcoming them was hopeless in the absence of careful planning and entrepreneurship of the cryonics idea. Both Ettinger and Cooper abdicated any responsibility for implementations of cryonics to others, and neither made any real efforts at a first approximation of technological specifications or business planning. In Ettinger's case, he uncritically and actively endorsed of con men, frauds, and the incompetent, actions that were so badly damaged the credibility of cryonics with people of means and influence, as well as those of the scientific community and the professions. Powerful, paradigm-changing ideas require careful husbandry and meticulous planning. A good example of this, that stands in sharp contrast to cryonics, is the idea of molecular nanotechnology, as first articulated, promulgated by Eric Drexler. Drexler understood not only the potential benefits of nanotechnology, but also the downsides, its nearly endless capacity for harm ranging from mischief to catastrophe. He also understood the need to back up general statements and assertions about the capabilities of nanotechnology with detailed scientific analysis and modeling. He did not write engines of creation and stop there. He followed through with nanosystems, and he surrounded himself with talented, honest, competent, articulate people who could not and did not promote his ideas in a responsible way, who could and did promote his ideas in a responsible way, to extraordinarily favorable reception. Well, reception, don't know. It is worth noting that Drexler, like Ettinger and Cooper, is also an introvert who shares most of the same personality traits with both men. Drexler was both a scientist and an engineer, and he approached communication of his ideas to both the scientific community and the public with care and precision. He clearly defined terms, and where necessary created new language to express ideas that could not be effectively communicated otherwise. By contrast, those promoting cryonics gave no thought to making important semantic distinctions, such as the difference between the sloppy and imprecise contemporary medical legal definition of death and the new reality that cryonics implied. Failure to define death with scientific rigor and establish cryonic suspension as a fourth state, as distinguished from life, death, and true suspended animation. Now, there was a condition with uncertain prognosis and uncertain time course to resolution, and the use of the word death and dead to describe cryopatients led to enormous confusion, and much more importantly, simply shut off consideration of the idea in most people's mind. Dead is dead, and that's it. Failure to be precise and to challenge the orthodox definition of death from the get-go was nothing more or less than a public relations and communications disaster. Similarly, identification aligns with the mortuary and cemetery trades as opposed to the medical and scientific professions, and failure to develop any in-house standards of care, either technical or financial, led to a total failure to professionalize cryonics. This in turn led to the empowerment of amateurs and laypersons, usually with the outsider personalities, often with accompanying deficits in social and emotional intelligence. These people attracted dysfunctional and sometimes frankly sociopathic personalities and members, and sometimes as activists. In a rare moment of candor, Ettinger came close to acknowledging this interpretation of the failure of cryonics to launch as possibly being material to how things turned out, and implicit in the statement and acknowledgement that cryonics failed, that it did not succeed in either becoming a dominant force in the culture or even establishing itself as a respected or feared minority player. Consider by contrast the outcome for Scientology, a movement started by another of Ettinger's cohorts 11 years earlier in 1953. Today, Scientology is a multi-billion enterprise with makes or breaks legislation in the US, elects representatives to Congress, tells the IRS what to do, and has at least 50,000 hardcore adherents in the US alone. While it is a tiny entity and has by no means come to dominate the culture, it has managed to survive withering attacks and to carve out a place of safe harbor and exert enormous political influence relative to its size. That happened because of careful planning and clever strategizing. It was no accident, and it was by no means inevitable. Okay, I'm being told to rush. I only have 5 minutes. Yeah, this is pretty bad. I'm just going to fly through. Okay. So, what is required for minimal critical elements for cryonics are depicted in this picture. Without it, it will not be a success. So this is going to fly through this as well. Yeah, it's too bad that I cannot cover the Chamberlain's contribution of Chamberlain's and the impact on Mike here, but sorry. The impact of fraud. I hope to be able to hold this whole thing completely somewhere, or have Mike recorded in full glory. And the impact of botched con men, and all these people were originally positive to cryonics and were ripped off. This is a classical case of a failure. The claims and the reality were very much not the same. I hope you can see the slides because I'm clicking through them at a pretty fast pace. Good. So what was the truth? The truth was not so pretty. Basically, it was a complete lie. The suspension was not a real suspension, but a badly botched job. So the same situation on the North Coast, New York, was much more positive actually. A parallel universe of sorts and cryonics. But it had a much worse impression because they were honest people, they were not con men. And they were, well, some early errors because they were not head down but head up, and it resulted in thermal cycling during nitrogen refill. So a big problem in cryonics. I'll cover that very quickly. So the friends in our future are unfortunately not our friends because they make us sloppy. They cannot even deny it that they're dropping the ball here. Similar problems, quantum immortality, another sterile idea which tends to make people complacent, and another semi-cult idea of singularity, which is suggests that we should do nothing because the situation will be fixed very soon anyway. Okay. What could possibly go wrong? Idea of good engineering. How can we build a bridge into the future? So his description, what was required and was actually happening, and was happening was not adequate. And what the result of this was actually changes which resulted in cryonics becoming done properly. The progress documented. As we are on a fast forward into the future here. Here's a flashback where the ideas, where the fraud and the fakirs have resulted in failure later on. And here's when cryonics becomes professional. Okay, I think I will just terminate it here. So I'm sorry, it wasn't entirely my fault. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Eugen.
Hi there. I'm just looking to make sure that my slideshow is up on the big screen, which it is not. Okay, I have my my camera on, and I'm ready to talk, and I hope everyone can hear me okay. Is everything all right?
Here.
Okay, great. First, I'd like to say thank you to Julio for organizing this conference and also inviting me to join it. I do think this is a really important topic for people personally and also for us socially. And I'd like to say thank you to those of you who are here with us today. I have to apologize for missing all of yesterday. My inner provincial American reared its ugly head, and I added 6 hours rather than subtracting them from the program times. Showed up at 9 p.m. last night, and of course no one was here, and well, all I can do is apologize for my own stupidity on those grounds. What I want to talk about is one of the kind of side issues that is happening in the world of transhumanism today, alongside all of the many conversations happening over what kinds of transhuman futures might come about and what sorts of ethics might be necessary to engage them. Another discourse has been ruffling feathers whenever it rears its ugly head. And for decades now, transhumanists have positioned themselves as different from and generally opposed to religious institutions. Despite this, many contemporary commentators, myself included, have tended to label transhumanism as religious. Today, I want to defend the claim that transhumanism has been and is religious, and the subsidiary claim that, in fact, its religiosity is more likely to benefit its advocates than harm them. The oppositions, oh, hold on just a moment. The opposition to religious labels about transhumanism goes back several decades. We could, for example, consider FM 2030, who believed religion to be wish fulfillment that humankind could outgrow. Now, that's pretty clearly borrowing from Sigmund Freud and his own belief that we as individuals and we as a society could mature out of religious belief. There might also be a sense in which the mid-20th century science fiction authors who helped drive transhumanism also contributed to the opposition among transhumanists to religious belief. Frequently, those science fiction authors criticized religion, even while actually maintaining religious ideas and practices in their own books, which was a fairly interesting phenomenon. Now, there are a couple of general strategies for engaging this idea. Now, one of those strategies we might list or might label as the philosophy, not religion strategy. That is, transhumanism is a philosophy, it's maybe even a way of life, but it is not a religion. This we could see in Max Moore's principles of extropy, which are very interesting and very insightful in a number of ways, and I'm only going to engage one of those, one of the issues that's on the table. Moore writes that, quote, extropy means favoring reason over blind faith and questioning over dogma. It means understanding, experimenting, learning, challenging, and innovating rather than clinging to beliefs. Now, like most of the principles of extropy, this particular statement probably has a fair bit going on, but there's one thing that is definitely clear. There is a distinction being drawn between extropy and traditional religious ideas. We can easily infer that traditional religious groups are those which cling to beliefs and hold unchanging dogmas. Extropians, on the other hand, would be people who are more inclined to be willing to change their beliefs, presumably based on scientific ideas. Now, that, of course, this is a perfectly legitimate kind of approach to this issue of thinking about transhumanism and religion, but I do think there's something of a strategic problem involved, and that's basically that it doesn't seem to have a huge emotional pull, and that may or may not be a problem depending on a particular person's perspective. Another strategy that we've seen is that demonstrated by the Order of Cosmic Engineers, which labeled itself an unreligion. The OCE emerged a few years ago, and fundamentally what makes it what it is, or what it was that it emerged out of virtual world activity and was particularly committed to virtual worlds, as opposed to other transhuman movements, which sometimes do not. Right up front in the prospectus, the OCE claims a cosmic quest to, quote, engineer and homestead synthetic realities suitable for ultimate permanent living. They also note that there is various religious stuff going on in the OCE. For example, the possibility of becoming immortal or godlike, or resurrecting the dead. Despite these agenda items, the OCE prospectus also claims, quote, we are not a faith-based organization, we are a convictions-based organization. And the word conviction, in fact, appears quite a lot in the text. Now, I have to profess that I do not entirely understand the distinction between convictions and faith, though if I had to guess, I'd suspect there are a couple of folks here who could perhaps untangle this for me. The real issue for me has to do with what's at stake between an unreligion and a religion. The prospectus says that the OCE members, quote, hold nothing or no one as sacred or holy. Now, that means that the OCE seemed willing to incorporate a certain spiritual dimension while still maintaining a distinction, a separation between what is religious and what is unreligious. Now, the OCE certainly had a number of strategic problems, and the tension over religion combined with the other problems, for example, the technical difficulties at stake in the project, to leave the community somewhat adrift. In particular, in my observation, the resistance to religion was frequently wrapped up in concerns over hierarchical versus distributed authority. Despite the contemporary rejection of religious labels, however, transhumanism is grounded in religious sensibilities. It emerges out of religious communities. For example, if we go all the way back to what, in my opinion, would constitute the first kind of transhuman book, we'd have to head back 400 years to Francis Bacon's New Atlantis. In New Atlantis, which also competes for the title of first science fiction book, although that's a little bit hazy, a number of sailors end up finding a place called Solomon's Island. And that is a place where technology has indeed enhanced human life in a way that many transhumanists would recognize as desirable, for example, through life extension. Sorry, one moment, I forgot I have another picture. And now I'm having problems moving my cursor around. There we go. Now, on Solomon's Island, life extension and other technologies are clearly connected to Christian hopes. In fact, for Bacon, all of those technological dreams are wrapped up in a post-millenarian Christian expectation that technology is doing God's work and bringing about God's kingdom on earth. Thus, technological improvement of humanity is a distinctly religious enterprise for Bacon, which doesn't, of course, mean it is for contemporary transhumanists. But if we turn to the 20th century and the individual widely credited as having coined the term transhumanism, we can read in Julian Huxley a broad acceptance of transhumanism as a religious community. Let's grab another slide. Huxley writes that humankind, quote, can, if it wishes, transcend itself, Not just sporadically, an individual here in one way, an individual there in another way, but in its entirety as humanity. We need a name for this new belief. Perhaps transhumanism will serve. Man remaining man, but transcending himself by realizing new possibilities of and for his human nature. Now, Huxley is manifestly not a Christian, but he nevertheless sees his work as presenting a kind of religious perspective. He writes, in Religion Without Revelation, quote, man's most sacred duty, and at the same time his most glorious opportunity, is to promote the maximum fulfillment of the evolutionary process on this earth, and this includes the fullest realization of his own inherent possibilities. He also has a conviction, quote, that religion of the highest and fullest character can coexist with a complete absence of belief in revelation in any straightforward sense of the word, and of belief in that kernel of revealed religion, a personal God. So we see that for Huxley, the concern is actually not so much transhumanism versus religion. He actually is in opposition to revealed religion, and that is religion with a personal God, not religion per se. He remained firmly committed to the idea that science can ground a new religion. And indeed, he even references the fact that there could be rituals, celebrations, a priesthood, temples, symbols, etc., as per any other religious tradition. In this, he's probably borrowing from Auguste Comte's positivist religion of the 19th century, which is effectively a religion of engineering. Now, it's worth asking why contemporary transhumanists dislike religion. This appears to me to come down to two sort of general principles. One, the belief that religion is false, or that all religions are false. Now, this is an understandable concern, but it's also an untestable proposition, and so I just want to leave it aside. The other is the belief that religion leads to intolerance. We'll come back to that later on. Now, despite the fact that there are these kinds of concerns with religion, there are contemporary transhumanist movements that are religious. Just as Huxley said, quote, 20th century man needs a new system of religious beliefs and attitudes adapted to the new situation in which his societies now have to exist. There are others who seek to provide religiously framed forms of transhumanism. Hans Moravec is one of the more influential figures, although not actually because his own books have been read as much as the books have been read that were borrowed from his own. Drawing upon 20th century science fiction, such as that of Arthur Clarke, Moravec provides a detailed defense of how rapidly progressing computer technologies would enable mind uploading for immortality and resurrection of the dead through high-fidelity simulation. Many of his ideas are in fact prefigured in older transhumanist literature, such as that of FM 2030, but they are given a more scientific gloss in Moravec's work. And in fact, they are also given a more religious gloss. This book that I show here, Robot, repeatedly uses religious language and religious imagery. Now, Moravec's work has been picked up by others, including the media darling Ray Kurzweil. Kurzweil himself has acknowledged that a new religion seems to be on the way and or necessary for future progress. And then we have our own Giulio Prisco, who has, for example, articulated a desire for a, quote, mimetically strong meta-religion without falling into strongly normative and coercive prescriptions. In that claim, we can see, for example, some of the concerns over intolerance, and we can see some of the concerns over religious conflict that have taken place, while we also see how Prisco recognizes a certain value to the kinds of stories that religions tell in driving their worldviews. Prisco has previously written that a transhumanist religion might solve the problems of religious intolerance, and that is a position that Huxley held as well. Thus, in some sense, the Turing Church, Prisco's recent creation, is ideologically in line with Huxley's early 20th century goals. It does seem to need more ideological clarity, though, and Prisco seems to recognize this. He seems to have indicated that Goetz's Cosmos Manifesto might be the answer to this problem. Now, in some sense, we're not really there yet. We'll go back. In some sense, transhumanism should be considered oh, I just got told I should put my webcam on the screen. I'm terribly sorry. I'll try to work that out. Oh, it's up there. Sorry. Okay. Back to transhumanism. Transhumanism is an example of what David Chittister calls an authentic fake. That is, a secular institution that does the work of a traditional religion. In our case, transhumanism offers moral ideals, salvation, even resurrection of the dead. These are clearly religious ideas. And indeed, for those who are not transhumanists, when transhumanists advocate these things, those who are not transhumanists look at them and say, well, that's clearly religious, which then the transhumanists say, no, it's not religious. And, you know, that kind of concern seems to be, in my opinion, problematic for the growth and dissemination of transhumanist ideas. Authentic fakes take their power not from the secular institutions in which they are involved, but from the sacred institutions in which they are involved. Not everyone likes Ray Kurzweil, for example, but everyone listens to him. Now, part of his appeal is that he's more than a bit odd. Kurzweil takes a lot of vitamins and that kind of thing. And part of his appeal is that he's obviously a very, very bright human being. But the rest of it, and probably the most important part of it, is that he gives people something to believe in, not just something to have convictions about, assuming there is something of a distinction there. This is in line with what Huxley writes. Huxley writes, what the world needs is an essentially religious idea system, unitary, charged with the total dynamic of knowledge, old and new, objective and subjective, of experience, scientific and spiritual. Quite frankly, people need something to believe in, something to aspire toward. While eliminating prejudice and intolerance is a noble ideal, that ideal is itself something to believe in. Adding a few more beliefs, such as it would be good for people to have freedom to live longer, doesn't really seem to be all that much of a stretch. And putting those beliefs into the religious marketplace means that they can engage people who are themselves have in themselves deeply rooted religious instincts. We human beings desire for things to be sacred. And it's probably not so much to ask that we try to find ways to be tolerant of all of this. You know, we can find in some of the opposition to religious intolerance a kind of intolerance of its own, and that's been more than transparent in 20th century politics, and more than transparent in some of the recent writings by individuals in the, quote, new atheist or bright movement. Now, I hope I didn't make anyone too angry, and I know I do have a tendency to irritate people with my ideas, not only because they tell me so, but because I can even read it. For example, if you go to the KurzweilAI.net website, there's a mention to my book there, and someone who admits to having not read the book immediately trashes the ideas as being incoherent. So I hope I didn't make anyone too angry, because that's certainly not my intent. But I do think there's a definite sense in which transhumanism is part of our religious landscape already. It is making promises that traditionally religious groups have made. And it seems to me, as an observer, that embracing this would benefit rather than harm the community. To embrace it would mean to allow the telling of stories. Not little stories, but big stories, the kind of stories that people live by and guide their lives by. Thank you. Now, are we rolling straight to Lincoln, or should I address questions? I'm happy to do it either way. Okay, so the question here is whether embracing this as a religion would be a way to avoid future shock, to prepare people mentally for a new age. I got to admit that when you say new age, I immediately start thinking about, kind of mid 20th century new agey thought here in the United States, and that maybe I don't know, I don't know that that's quite what you're looking for, but that's where I go. Now, in terms of the potential for big, huge changes in our lives, a new age in a different sense, I do think that this is one of the things religion does. If we look back to, say, apocalyptic Christianity, and I've elsewhere talked about people like Moravec and Kurzweil as being fundamentally apocalyptic. If we look back to apocalyptic Christianity, we found that people were anticipating a different world to come. And it does seem clear that writing about it and thinking about it would enable those in the community to, in fact, be prepared for that new age to come. Now, the fact that that new age did not come was, that may not have any bearing whatsoever on whether a new transhumanist age will come. But it's certainly the case that, for example, in the letters of Paul in 1 Corinthians, when he talks about the days to come, he is trying to push preparation. Absolutely. And he even offers practical preparation. So I think there is a sense in which calling it religious may, in fact, enable those kinds of opportunities. Okay. There's another question. Julio, should I be trying to answer that, or should I be walking off the stage? It says Stefano wonders whether the tension between... it just went away when people started typing. Please stop typing for just a moment while I manage to read this question. Okay, whether the conflict over transhumanism as a religion has to do with the fact that it is connected to Judeo-Christian traditions and not others. I think there is certainly a case that to be made for that, and that works on both ends of the spectrum. The people who are members of transhumanist communities are members of transhumanist communities largely in the Euro-American West, in which the Judeo-Christian religious traditions have run most rampantly, and thus the opposition to religion in general seems to be largely about opposition to the Judeo-Christian religious traditions. In reverse, it does seem to be also the case that a member of those traditions could easily find him or herself problematized by the transhumanist agenda. If we start talking about making people immortal through mind uploading, then all of a sudden we have perhaps a pretty serious conflict with immortality in the Judeo-Christian tradition. But I think that a good bit of that conflict does seem to come from the fact that people have objections to that older tradition here in the Euro-American West. Thank you all very much for listening. I'm going to turn off my webcam and cede the podium to Natasha now.
Hi there, Giulio. Come stai? Giulio, can you hear me? Sound check.
Okay, Natasha, so I switched to voice because that is faster, only going to have some echo. In order to load your presentation on the screens, I'm assuming that you have a folder with JPEGs. You just have to drag the folder with JPEGs onto one or two small screens. And please remember to switch your webcam on like you were doing before, because we definitely want to see you. Here she is. Okay. Okay, now we can see Natasha and we just have to see her PowerPoint. Let me go to the screens. I see that she's uploading something. For those who are worried about the echo, it's going to disappear soon. Okay, now Natasha is on and the slideshow is on. Over to you, Natasha. We're not hearing you, Natasha. Switch your microphone on.
Giulio, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, we got out of order. I'm going to go and sit back down. It's according to the schedule, I am not up now, so let's go back to the order. I'm looking for the program. Just a moment, please. Whose time is it? Can someone please answer this question? That would be really great.
Natasha, in theory, it was Robert, then me, then Lincoln, then you, then Suzanne. But personally, I'd just be delighted to speak whenever, provided Giulio could give us some feedback on our revised schedule so we know when we're actually going to speak.
Yes, I'm going to go to the website and just follow that.
Okay, well, in that case, then I'm speaking some hours ago if you follow that one.
I'm sorry?
Well, if you can't follow that one now, because I should be speaking several hours ago, so it's not that the schedule is behind.
I know, I was looking at the order.
Yeah.
I was looking at the order of speakers. Giulio?
We had to change the order at the last moment and very well. Okay, you just continue to talk, Natasha. Thanks.
Okay, I will. I don't know what's going on, so I'll lead in here. Okay, let me remove my own image from the screen. Okay, now in order to click on the slides, I click at the top of the bar. Is that correct, Giulio?
No, you click on the windows on the bottom part of the screen.
Okay, I need someone to help me, please. Thank you.
In order to zoom on the presentation screen, you click the title bar, and then you can go forward with the presentation, forward and back with the arrows, but I see that you're doing more or less just that.
Okay. I'm trying to get back to the podium.
Okay, why don't we do like that? You just say next slide, and I will advance it for you.
No, I'd rather do it myself.
So you click on the top bar
here we go.
of the little screen. Great, great.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be
Thank you,
here.
Natasha.
And I thank you, Giulio, for putting this conference together. I think it's just fabulous that we are able to telecommute like this in teleplace. So I really appreciate that. And I enjoyed Eugene and Robert's talks this morning, and I look forward to everyone else's. This is a very important topic of cryonics and transhumanism and radical life extension. I'm going to be doing something a little different today, something I've never done before in a talk, and that is giving a little history about a project I've been working on for 10 years called Primo Posthuman and Human Enhancement. I'm going to tell you how it came about, something I've never shared with anyone, and as a designer and performer, it has a certain history in performance and the literary arts rather than necessarily sequestered into the visual design humanities. I wrote this poem in the mid-90s in difference to FM Esfandiari or FM 2030, who's a very dear friend of mine, who would always make humorous comments about cryonics and replacement parts and living longer. I performed this piece at Electronic Cafe in Santa Monica with a team of other performers, and it took a step forward into the future as far as human enhancement. I highlight a line at the bottom of the poem that says, not yet born. What this relates to is that the vision of replacing our parts, our body parts, our intellectual acumen, our flexibility, our neuroplasticity, our creativity is an ongoing process. And for human enhancement, the process, in my case, dealing with Primo Posthuman began with something known as the automorph or the automorphore. The most important question here in regards to the automorph and human enhancement, and especially brain plasticity and the future of our brain and mind in non-biological substrates is our discrimination about age. How old are you? And everyone wants to know how old you are, whether it's your driver's license or your social security or when you get a job or you go into a relationship or you apply for a loan. It's always the age that defines us rather than our level of experience and exchange. It's my estimation that we're not quite born yet, or that we're in a continuous relationship with life and death where we're continually reborn. In 1996, I was filmed for BBC reciting this poem in a recitude about the cyborg and human enhancement and what might we look like as cyborgs in the future. But it all began with an issue of not being born, and why I wanted to emphasize this phrase, not yet born. I had lost a pregnancy some years ago, and this is an image of the uterus, the fallopian tube, the blood clot, and where the fetus was growing outside the uterus within the fallopian tube. To the right is an image of the size of a fetus at the number of months, 4 months, where my pregnancy was terminated because it was an ectopic pregnancy and the fetus died, causing a near-death experience for me, meaning I had minutes to live, and fortunately I had an excellent surgeon while in Japan. But the interesting thing is that I was performing in Japan at this time and was pregnant, and I thought I was being very careful about my health and my body. Evidently, I did not know what was going on in my body, and I see this as a continuous situation about we can't see what's going on in our bodies. We look at the outside. We have a sense of aesthetics about who we are, our identity, our presence in the universe, but what's going on in our bodies, we don't know that yet. A little bit, but not quite. So this was a shocking situation for me, which prompted the idea of not being quite born yet, the idea of life and death, the idea of wanting to become involved in cryonics in 1990, and the idea of enhancing. Why was I, as well as many millions of women, physiologically frail in not being able to produce a child? The Automorph project was developed further in 1997 as a self-actualized morphing of physiology in an attempt to reduce cellular damage and increase neuroplasticity. In 2000, a new stage of morphing had been realized in this project. It was featured in a Wired magazine on the cover, and the concept was extending the lifespan. And here we have a picture of the woman who is the oldest living woman, Maria Malkat. And I guess you would pronounce it in French, Camus, and she lived to 122 years. And the article featured my work with automorphing and human enhancement and primo-post-human, and taking this directive of issues about humaneness and life and death and the frailty of our bodies into looking at where science and technology could take us in the not-too-distant future. My strategy at that time was to quantify chronological age versus physiological condition. So I started working with my body fat, muscle mass, balance, flexibility, endurance and strength, bone density, hormonal levels, ability to problem solve, my own level of creativeness, action response reasonability, and how I dealt with my emotions in situations and my feedback control, and to ensure a sense of well-being, which is like anything in life, it's a relationship and it requires that we work at it. This project ended up into a book, and along with the project I developed more muscle mass, more bone density, and more neuroplasticity. The outcome, it was titled, or is titled, One-on-One Fitness. And here this is me working out and building up my body, so if I was to become pregnant again, I would have more awareness and flexibility within my own body, especially my hormone level and a level of understanding what was going on in my body, which evidently I lacked. I guess my neuroplasticity was very low, not to realize what was going on. I ought to have known. And I find this a situation with most of us. We have certain things going on in our bodies, and we don't pay attention to it. I think it's very important for us to keep a very formal chart, a list of what's going on, and to test it. So the further strategy here was to conceptualize a semi-biological future body prototype. The image here in the middle is my body as I'm trying to develop bone density and muscle mass. And I worked with Kronos Clinic in Scottsdale, Arizona with Dr. Chris Heward, testing my bone density, testing my, not my cognitive acumen, my ability to endure stress tests and analyses. And I took all that information, I've been working with it ever since, to schedule out what I need to do at my specific chronological age, because age is important in this regard, but to also base it on how I'm reducing my age, how I'm attempting to grow more mature, let's say, at a slower rate, at a more even-paced rate. The strategy further taking this project went into what was developed as Primo Posthuman, which is a conceptualized whole-body prosthetic built with the emerging technologies of nano, bio, technology, information technology, and cognitive and neurosciences, well known in the transhumanist community as being NBIC or nanobioinfocogno. I added a plus there because I see artificial general intelligence as being extremely necessary for this project to be realized, as well as robotics, and of course nanotechnology includes Robert Friedis's, Dr. Friedis's nanomedicine. As well as other projects like Martine Rothblatt's Mind File and different works with neuroplasticity, as well as uploads, and we're going to hear talk about that later. So here I have a chart of the outcome, or a diagram of it, how I see add-ons to the metabrain, the external layer of the skin, the internal layer of the body, which obviously is very important to me in that I lost my reproduction process due to a frail body, but also a frail awareness of what was going on inside my body. And I especially planned this project to be different than the BBC film I had done, where I looked more cyborgized. I wanted to steer away from, I'm sorry, speaking, I'm sorry, forgive me. I wanted to steer away from the cyborgization of the human and lean towards a different type of aesthetic, that of life prolongation. Is my voice still too loud? I can turn my mic down. Anyway, just cue me and let me know. The project this year has gone into looking at the body as a set of systems, not only the body, but as well as the brain and the mind. Of course, the brain is part of the body, but the mind as situated in the brain, but as a whole system onto itself. I incorporated the cybernetics as a theory as consequential in recognizing the body and brain as this type of set of system, and how they correlate processes together, and how they can be upgraded to perform more aptly, more seamlessly together. The other part of this situation, as I described in my abstract, is that the ecomorphology of how we morph and what type of environment we're involved in does make a difference according to our ability to morph, to automorph, or ability to conceptualize our futures, and how these futures could be arranged so that we become more proactive and look towards being responsible for our own longevity and health and vitality. I created a project called the Progress Action Campaign to serve as a conduit of information and exchange to counter the biases against advancing technologies, which of course were to help humanity problem solve the issues that we face as transhumanists. This project became the VP Summit, the Vital Project Summit, in 2004. A list of the speakers are here, including Ronald Bailey, DeGray, Friedis, Criswell, Moore, Minsky, Peterson, Shapiro, Silverstock, myself, Walford, and West. It was an exciting project because we dealt head-on with one of the greatest issues that transhumanism has faced over the past number of years, past 5-6 years, and that is the criticism from what we usually refer to as the Luddites, or let's just call them the bioconservatives. The increasing threat to human enhancement sciences and technologies were right in front of us, and it was my proposition that we get together and start dealing with this as a team, as a group. And we did this through Extra P Institute, which I was president of for, I guess, about 4 years. And I think this project was a really good success because it was the first time the transhumanists actually got together in a synthesized group, and we addressed the Fukuyama's proposal and President Bush's, George Bush's bioethics committee, which was opposed to our interest in enhancement for the reason, I'm going to just paraphrase this and generalize, that it destroys our dignity, our humaneness, our dignity. The outcome of this project is very interesting, and it's twofold, actually. The proactionary principle was developed by Max Moore, and it is a very interesting project because it looks strategically at what the issues are and how we can problem solve them by enhancing our cognitive abilities to problem solve as we are as humans with our wet matter. And I think that's very important because we don't have we have a bit of moist matter, but we don't have post-biological artificial general intelligence yet, of course. So we need to really deal with these problems with what we've got. And the second part of this project was called morphological freedom. Max Moore also coined that phrase, and Anders Sandberg has built on it and turned it into a very fascinating topic of discussion. Anders and I were guests in Second Life by Giulio a number of years ago, and it was concerning morphological freedom. I developed this project here, which is an ad for the freedom of rights to morph, and of course morphological freedom suggests the rights to enhance and the rights not to be coerced to enhance. So I think it's a very important project for human rights and enhancement. The next project here is how is this proactionary principle, the proaction coalition, the issues of enhancement, the biopolitics came into Primo Posthuman and the Automorpher as a project. The project turned from being a performance to a visual conceptual piece to a research project which engages the issues of people who are genetically, well, that includes all of us, of course, but our genetics having, of course, faulty mutations. I've had cancer twice, so I do have genes with faulty mutations, but that we are in an environment and our behaviors are making adaptations with our automorphological adaptation. So that brings in the cybernetics again, probably the second order cybernetics, because within second order cybernetics, the observer is part of the system. And automorphing, like autopoiesis, brings the observer into the process, into the practice. So here, the automorpher became more engrossed and entranced by the fundamental issues and facts of where we are, where we have been for the past, say, 10 years in assessing transhumanism and enhancement, and how we could apply the proactionary principle or different graphics on design works or films and multimedia on addressing the issues that we face today, because they are only going to grow, in my estimation, especially as we begin morphing more dramatically. And especially as we start thinking about a multitude of variations that we might become and variations which we might inhabit, which begs the question, well, what would we look like? And, oops, frozen, sorry. It ties into a number of different domains, design domains, like wearable technology, which pulls off of Kevin Warwick and Stephen Mann, for example. But in this piece, Laura Beloff is working with the heart, and it is the viable heart and then reading the rhythm of the heart in its relationship to connecting to other people. So even today, within the field of wearables, designers are enhancing and looking at enhancement. In the field of robotics, here you have Lionel Mura, who's located in Portugal, in Lisbon, Portugal. He works with robotics to enhance his body in a creative way. So he's attaching his cognitive imagination into the programming of the AI-steered robot to build his artworks and his presentations. Another work is of Stellark, who has been doing morphology for a number of years, and his design basically functions with robotics in an exoskeleton and different augmentations that work with the body and the musculature, and his relationship in communication with others. So there is a cybernetic The last two slides. Oh. Oh. I guess I'm supposed to hold off as a sound problem. So I'll wait.
I can hear you fine.
Okay. Okay. I think they're having problem at, well, I'll just move back and go to the next one. Okay, so, and here we have Kevin Warwick augmenting his nervous system with a type of enhancement, but it's more of an augment actually than an enhancement, I suppose, because it's not really enhancing his life longevity or his neurophysiology or his, I think it's not that transhumanist in regards to the long term that we look at as life prolongation and becoming smarter. I think this is a very interesting project. Okay, I see the network. Hold on, network problem here. I'll still wait. See if I get a cue. See, hold on, network problem here. Is my voice still too loud? Is my mic up still too high?
Certainly still fine in the virtual world.
Okay. Can anyone see Julio or the audience? I know that I had them up on my webcam, but they're gone now.
Looks frozen from where I'm standing.
Oh, okay, so hold on. Yeah, I agree. Oh, I haven't. I was just with Stellark last weekend in Denmark. We were both giving talks at the Biotopia conference. They're frozen. Okay. Does anyone else have a webcam up?
No, I think it's just you and theoretically Kim/Julia. Oh no, somebody is.
Okay. Is anyone in Italy? Can they see here? No, I don't think so. I don't think they can.
Does somebody in the virtual world have a phone number for somebody at the event?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
I don't have. I know Julio's there, and I know Aubrey's there. I don't know who else is there. I don't have numbers for either of those.
I have Giulio's number. I could try calling him from my house.
Probably be a good idea.
Okay, I'll open it. Oh, here, I just got a message. He said, we will let you know as soon as we fix. Can you read this? Oh, maybe they're calling me. Hold on. No, I can't answer it. I can't reach that far. Oh. Oh.
No, we read that just fine, Giulio. Giulio, if you can hear me speaking by audio now, that probably means that you could hear Natasha if she were speaking right now.
Okay, hi. That was Max. He said they totally lost their internet connection and they're trying to get it back up. Oh, echo. Sorry.
Okay, well, Giulio was just speaking then in the text chat, so presumably they have some kind of internet there.
Oh. Max said their teleplace is totally down, that we could go to Skype if everyone wants to, but they're going to try to get it back up. I don't know why there's an echo.
There's no echo here.
Oh. Okay. Someone said there was an echo. Who's that? Echo.
Okay, everybody except me, apparently.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, I fear that may have been the case, so I switched it off.
Oh.
embarrassing when transhumanists have such problems with technology, but then again, maybe other demographics would simply not try to do such complex things.
Oh, but I love it. And let's see. I agree with Suzanne. I mean, I think we need to persist and just get better at them. Bad we don't have money to build our own interface to do this. Just call it the Transhumanist Hub. Hey, Jean, that was a great talk. I enjoyed it. Oh, yeah? Hey, Sergio, where are you? Are you in Italy? Sevilla. Sevilla. Boy. I think what I'll do is I'll just wrap mine up when he comes, because it's going to take forever. And then when Julio comes back, maybe I'll just go to the end and then, oh no, he's recording this. Oh, darn. Yeah, I guess we could do that. The good news is it's earlier in the US for most of us here. Oh, okay, yes, I'll read it. Thank you. Let me pull it up. I'll read you the poem. Okay, let me enlarge this. Okay, I'll read it. Is my voice okay? Can you hear me? I guess so. Okay. Okay, here we go. Smooth sensation, silicon, silver-like structure, running pulses of data, glistening chips, nanochips, small, smaller, smallest, animated realities, virtual realities, multiple selves. A door opened quietly, and she walked into the room, her body smooth, supple, her shoulders held back proud, a glimmer in her eye, and without notice she brushed her hair away. "How old are you?" they asked. "How old are you?" A hesitation filled her as she quickly assessed. "My augmentation is 3 years now, my right hip 5. Ocular implants just 2 weeks. Age reversal nearly 9. She took a sip of water, licking the droplets off her lips, her eyes glimmering, hair shimmering sterling, her outer sheath like mulatto warm bronze. "How old are you?" they asked. "How old are you?" And when she turned to leave the room, all eyes followed her form, just to realize before she left she was not yet born. Thank you. I like the image of it. It's kind of, I suppose, how we all feel in our imagination that the us that we want to be isn't here yet. I know I feel that way. The person I want to be and the human or the personhood I'd love to inhabit, I'm not there, and I'd love to experience it. So all I can do as a designer and theoretician is to, you know, try to make it into something that I can conceptualize. It's hard to share, though. It's hard to share sometimes because I use myself in all my work, and it's embarrassing. And I know Stellart can do it, and Kevin Warwick does it, and most of my friends and colleagues do it. But I'm not a technologist, so I have difficulty. I don't know how to do robotics. I don't know how to do AI. I don't know how to do all of that. So it's I think it would be phony for me to walk around doing that type of thing where Kevin Warwick can do it. That's his field, or Stellark, that's what he does. So my interest is, I suppose, just my personhood and trying to keep it alive. And so that's where I segue into my work. Yes, I agree. Poems are beautiful. I haven't written them in years. Um, I agree. I agree. It's the problem we face is that I know I've been in the film industry for so many years, and um, I tired of it because the films were. I mean, I love the emotions, the raw emotions of the characters and the plots and whatnot, but the science fiction films were so dystopic, and it made me annoyed. I got pissy. I didn't like to be around it because even though they're clever and brilliant, just so brilliantly animated and directed and acted, and the effects are just amazing. There's a mean streak in much of it, and I'd love to see some works that didn't have that. I'm going to get there's a Japanese artist who just did some amazing work in videography. Um, oh, it's on my Facebook page. Let me see if I can go to it quickly, and I'll get the link and show it to you all because it is just, it's like a Second Life environment, but it's beautiful. Hold on just a moment. Let me see if I can find it. I used to make a lot of videos, but I haven't done it anymore since I've been writing my PhD. All I do is study theory and try to write better. I'm not very good at it, but I mean, academic writing I have to do. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Oh, here it is. It's called An Anomalous Garden, and it's just really beautiful. So here I'm going to paste it in the window for you all to look at. See if you can follow this link. Um, I didn't? Okay, let's see. Um, oh, here. Okay, I'll post it again. Yeah, try. There. Okay, that should get it. It's just stunningly beautiful. Well, I wonder if Max said he'd call back. He was using Julio's cell phone. Oh, thank you. That's sweet. Okay, go back to this. I wonder if they do come back. We're already. See, what time is it there? It's 12 here. One, two, three, four, five, six. It's 7 o'clock there. I'm going to want to break for dinner soon, probably in an hour. So I think it might be wise to, for me to not finish my talk and then, because there's really not that many people in the audience, but maybe just do it separately for Julio to record for his project. And then, like I said, yeah. But David, if you were supposed to be speaking 4 hours ago, what happened?
Good question, Natasha.
Well, let's see. Let me go back to the I guess I'm obnoxious, but I'm a stickler for going with the program because every speaker puts so much effort in their presentation and their talk, and we all want to, deliver something meaningful to the audience and then please, our host. So I like to stick to the program just for that, in difference to Julio and the people in the audience. I don't care about myself, but it's, because they're there waiting. I don't understand. Let me see.
Likewise, I found it not a lot of fun. The conference in Brussels recently, having to tell important, intelligent, and lovely people to stop talking when they were overrunning by how much in an effort to try and keep to the schedule. So I can certainly appreciate how difficult it is to keep these things on track. But the best we can do is try and bear with them, I guess.
I like it when the conference, hold on.
Oscar, no boy, come here.
When the conference says you have X number of minutes, please stick with it, go over your presentation, make sure, and then holds up a sign that says you 15 minutes and then 5. Okay, so today it was well, I see the teleplays talks start with Eugene, Robert, Lincoln, Natasha, Suzanne, and Ben Gertzel's not going to be speaking. So, hold on just a second.
Oscar, no. Come here, boy. Good boy.
Want to go on camera? You can't. Come up here. Here's Oscar. Can you see? Honey, oh, to my. There's no one there. There's no one there. Oh, sorry. Sorry. It's probably those Christians at the door. Oscar barks when the Christians come in and try to, and that makes Max very happy.
Natasha, if you're considering not finishing your talk, would you consider finishing it for us so that we at least can hear it? And then if the people in Milan can't hear it, then maybe you could record it later for Julio as you suggested otherwise?
Okay, I'll finish it then. Okay, that sounds good. Good boy, Oscar, for getting those Christians away. Okay. Let's see, where did I get to? Okay, so let me go. We went here and here. Look like. Okay, went through wearable robotics. Okay, then we went through Stellark and Kevin Warwick, and then here. Okay. This work is a bio-art work, and oftentimes my own work is situated in bio-art because I do different projects that MRI scans, and I analyze them, and everything that I'm doing is surfaced on the body, but my conceptual theoretical work is on the future without the biological body, but my bio art work deals with the body. This piece is really fascinating. It's Eduardo Katz, and if you all know his work, he created the Green Bunny a number of years ago. He was in the same PhD program that I'm in at the Planetary Collegium with Roy Ascott. This project right here, Cypher DIY Transgenetic Kit, is a kit for you to analyze your own DNA. So I think it's quite an exciting project. I don't think it's as sophisticated probably as some of the work that the DIY bio folks are doing that are highly sophisticated. But this is a wonderful art piece that looks good as well. It looks almost like a product design, so I love it. Okay, so now going back a little bit to the cybernetics aspect of the automorpher, I love this quote by Norbert Weiner that a living organism is no longer seen as a permanent form, but rather a network of activity. And this ties into the human enhancement project of using the nanobioinfocogno, and it shows a relationship with the technical arts of human computer-based integrations and interaction of HCI, and which reveal an artistic aim to extend our senses, our cognition, and our mobility. Well, biotechnology, as you all know, furthers this into the physical appearance of what we could look like. And so it begs the question again, could enhancement be developed in a different non-biological context? What could we design or automorph into with the tools of human enhancement? And what type of biosynthetic ecology might we have? Well, you all are familiar with Greg Venter's work, which is pretty darn exciting. You know, when you think about it, it's been considered something that would be possible, and most of us know it would be probable, and certainly it is a simple synthetic relationship that with cells that he's created, but it takes us one step further to where we hope to go with the uploads or whole brain emulation, or as Robert and Suzanne call it, the substrate independent minds. David, thanks. Okay, and then the issue here is the mind uploading. Da Vinci's image on the right, I think exemplifies this in a very early stage. As you know, Leonardo da Vinci drew the first contact lenses. He conceived of them early on, and of course flight and different types of augmentations to the body. I think that the fact that he designed the contact lens is pretty amazing when we think about how he understood the body and its structure and its inner network, and how the augmentation could possibly enhance sight. I love the image on the right. That's the designer is Elif Ayater. She runs the design department at the University of Istanbul in Istanbul, Turkey. And she's a very frequent visitor in the metaverse. In fact, she is now the editor of Metaverse Creativity, which is published by Intellect Books. And it is, I think, one of the only academic journals on the metaverse, and maybe the only one that is done through the venue. I know definitely of Intellect Books, but I just wrote an article for it that's being published, I think, next month when the next issue comes out, and I think the second issue of it, dealing with the metaverse and brain plasticity, neuroplasticity, and does the metaverse help us realize new personalities, new personas, and is that something that we're doing unconsciously that will help us will it function as a liaison in helping us when we develop multiple personas and multiple substrates? So I drew a connection there between the avatars in the metaverse and our own, the transhumanist desire to have multiple identities and multiple substrates or platforms. The two images on the left are primo posthuman at an early stage when I was looking at, and I did design these through Pixar's first program. As you know, Pixar is one of the leading animators in the film industry right now. I got it when it was right off the shelf some years ago, and my first design, the only design I did in Pixar was the primo posthuman. And below it is, a human with prosthetic legs, which is quite beautiful movement. I just love looking at this image. It just gives hope to people who have spinal cord injuries. And then Alif Ayater's avatar in Second Life. So I thought these tied in nicely quite well. So this is the end of my talk. I had tried to make it short and sweet for the audience. I could have gone on to infinity, but I just wanted to look at these examples as insights positioned to revolutionize the architecture of life prolongation, that when we think about life prolongation, at least from the vantage of Aubrey de Grey and Roy Walford and different super longevity activists, we're looking between the time frame and trying to extend that time frame beyond the 122 approximate years that our genetics can continue regenerating and creating new cell structure. Of course, nanomedicine and genetic engineering, etc., can extend that, but do we really want to be sequestered or tethered to a biology? The transhumanist vision is to unfix that biology and to develop other systems within which to explore our own creativity, our intellection, our explorations as personhood stemming from the human. And I think one of the greatest advantages that we have worked on as humans, whether it's intentional or adaptive, is our ingenuity and our sense of adventure and exploration. So I think that no matter what platform or substrate we evolve into, that this sensibility, the joie de vivre will always be with us as long as we decide to maintain it. And I think that's part of that automorphic decision in being insightful in understanding the Progress Action Coalition and the pro-actionary principle and the theoretical findings in cybernetics, that they fit into a nice sensibility. And there's my theory. So I thank you very much, and that is the end of my talk. Got a little bit sidetracked there, but I hope you all enjoyed it, at least here. You're welcome.
Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you.